all-time starting lineups that they're putting up there? Who's got the better list here, Tim? This is some pretty recent history that we're talking about.
I was going to say, do they know the NBA existed before 1993? I'm going to take VJ's team.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to take
They're very similar, actually. Iman's face right now. Well, since we're making some picks, Iman.
I'm just confused if they could have everybody avail. I'm just confused.
You know what? I think we're going to chalk it up to age and recent history. But we thought we'd do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'm going to give you two options. You're going to pick one. Simple. Iman, you'll start us off here. Two future Hall of Fame point guards are on the available free agent list. So a different list than those guys we're doing here. Who has more to offer a team right now? Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook?
CP, don't hate me. Give me Russell Westbrook. CP, don't kill me. Don't kill me.
Why?
Russell Westbrook is one of the fiercest competitors I've ever gotten to compete against. And when you talk about somebody that will give themselves up and do whatever for the team, I think that he's a little more suited for that position than a Chris Paul would be. Chris Paul's pretty much been dominant with the ball the whole time. That's the way you want him to play, and that's the only way I think he can. I don't think he could play as efficient as Russell Westbrook could.
Everyone who has played with Russ raves about him as a teammate, too. Like, a lot of folks say that they have really enjoyed him on their team as opposed to playing against him. What about the Lakers and the Clippers? They both had some really interesting off seasons. ESPN Bet released their win totals. Lakers over under 48.5. The Clippers 47.5. Tim, who do you think is going to win more games?
The Clippers. The Clippers are clearly the best team in L.A. And look, it's not necessarily about star power. Let's talk about the defense bit on the floor. The Lakers have a whole lot of question marks. The Clippers have probably 6 guys on their roster who would be the best defender in that Lakers locker room.
Lakers Clippers this year in Crypto.com Arena could be interesting. All right, incoming Duke freshman, top 3 high school recruit Cameron Boozer. He recently said that Duke is being, quote, overlooked this season. It's not like he already has his locker ready in Portland. He agreed to a 3-year, $42 million contract to return to the Blazers after being waived by the Bucks earlier this month. The 9-time All-Star, he will likely miss the entire upcoming season, recovering from an Achilles injury, but he returns to the team that drafted him in 2012. And I love that they already had the locker room ready for his return. Our senior insider, Shams Charania, is here with more. Shams, there were a lot of teams interested in Damian Lillard. Beyond sort of the heartfelt story, who else was in the mix, and why did he ultimately choose to go back to Portland?
Malika, over a dozen teams made minimum and mid-level exception offers to Damian Lillard. 2 teams in particular, I'm told, that Damian Lillard really considered, and that's the Boston Celtics and the Minnesota Timberwolves. He held calls with both teams at different points. But to be in Portland, back home, with his 3 young kids, that was by far the most important factor, I was told, in his return to the Trailblazers. And he was going to spend the year rehabbing in Portland anyways from that Achilles tear. But to return to Portland, the franchise that he obviously is an icon in, that meant a lot to him. He held multiple meetings with general manager Joe Cronin and head coach Chauncey Billups at his house in the last few weeks. So he goes back 3 years, $42 million. He's one of 2 players, along with LeBron James, to have a no-trade clause right now in the NBA. So a return to Portland made sense for him on a lot of different levels. And this next season, Malika, he's going to be earning $70 million between his Bucks salary and his Blazers salary. In 2 years before his player option in 2027, he has a guaranteed $141 million over the next 2 years.
I mean, I know that he will be sitting out likely all year, but making $70 million to do that isn't so bad if you want to look at the glass half full here. The recovery process, though, is going to be long. What are his expectations, Shams, for when he might return to the court?
Malika, Damian Lillard will be using the entire 2025-26 season to rehab that Achilles tear and then make his return, his reunion in Portland in that arena in 2026, 2027. And then he has that opt-out in the summer of 2027. The mindset of Damian Lillard right now is that summer he will be going into free agency, potentially in line for another big deal. But now he's in Portland. He's going to be there rehabbing. He's going to be there, a big part of the community, big part of the roster, a leader for that young team. You think about what the Blazers have done this offseason, not only in the draft with Yang Hansen, but also getting Jrue Holiday, a veteran all-star caliber player. Then you get now Damian Lillard back. So they're making moves to retool this roster to try to be more competitive in the next couple of years. Chauncey Billups finished last season 22-18. They had a top 5 defense as well in the second half of the season.
And you just think, Shams, the first time back in Moda Center when they say over the PA system and wearing the letter O, it's Damian Lillard. That place is going to go absolutely nuts. Thank you so much for your reporting, Shams. We'll see you back here in just a little bit. Udonis Haslem, Bobby Marks, Iman Shumpert joining me now. I'm going to start with you here, UD. Your first reaction when you saw that Damian Lillard is going back to Portland?
Excitement, excited. I'm happy for Dame. I understand who Dame is as a person. I understand the things that are important to Dame is his love for his family and his loyalty to the city of Portland. He loves the city of Portland. He never really wanted to leave, but he wanted to put himself in a position where he can fight and contend for a championship. And his love for his family is very important for him. I look at that situation in Portland and I say, yes, he's not going to play the year that's coming up, but he has the opportunity to mentor some great young players. He has the opportunity to be next to Chauncey Billups, who's a champion. Dame is obviously a Hall of Famer. They just brought in James Posey, who's a champion. Jrue Holiday's a champion. So when you look at Scoot Henderson, when you look at Sharp, when you look at Klingon, when you look at all these young guys, Yang Hansen, the guy who they got from China, when you look at all these young guys, this is really an opportunity for these young guys to really learn from some of the best guys that have played the game of basketball.
Without a doubt, I got to second him there. Like, having Damian Lillard in a role now where he doesn't have to produce 40 points. It's just going to be a year for him to talk to guys, make sure guys are in the right position, make sure guys are working out to make themselves better in their own right. Then when he joins the team the following year, we'll be able to look at what he can do and see if he can go a little bit less on the Dame time and just be more, honestly, big shot. Be more Chauncey Billups in that idea of I'm going to direct traffic a little bit more. I'm going to put guys in positions to be successful. I'm not trying to win a scoring title. I'm trying to win a title.
Right, and waiting now with Scoot Henderson maybe or a Shaedon Sharp mentoring those young guys, because with no Anthony Simons on this team anymore, they really have an ability to step up this year. I completely understand, and I think it's so wonderful, the family part of all of this as well, Bobby, but looking at this deal from the Blazers' point of view, how should they be looking at this?
I think, Malika, you look at it in two different ways here. I think the first way is that he's an extension of Chauncey Billups' coaching staff this upcoming year, certainly rehabbing from that Achilles injury. As Sham said, the likelihood is that he's not going to be playing. You've got all these young players, as Iman and UD has said, certainly Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharp and Donovan Klingon. So for right now, it's the extension part as far as when he can get back healthy. And then the second part is then on the basketball court. How is the pairing with Jrue Holiday work? How does that work next year? Most of this roster is intact for the 2026-27 season. Really, the only big free agent is Robert Williams. So you do bring back the nucleus of this roster. The other thing, too, Malika, when he left in 2023, that roster was not very good. When you look at it 2 years later, this is a significantly improved roster that he's walking into right now.
Yeah, and when you look at why he left to try to win a title here. It wasn't a successful fit, really, with the Milwaukee Bucks, and in heartbreaking fashion, he tore his Achilles at the end of the season. But when you look at the basketball fit now, UD, for Damian Lillard with Portland, it's not necessarily one of those upper echelon contender teams, but there are ways in which this works. How do you see that?
Obviously, the mentorship the first season, but then the second season you come in and everybody knows how great Dame is, controlling the pace, handling the ball, scoring the basketball. But I also feel like he has the opportunity to play next to a great guard who can defend on both ends, who can play both sides of the basketball court. When you look at what Milwaukee was able to do with Jrue Holiday at the point guard when they were 11th in offense, but they were #1 in defense. So when you look about Dame going back to Portland, yes, Dame is going to score a lot of points, but when you talk about a team who finished 5th in defense last year in the second half of the season, this is another opportunity to get one of the best two-way players in the league. You saw the impact that he had with Milwaukee winning the championship. You saw the impact that he had with Boston winning the championship. So when you put one of the best clutch players in the league next to one of the best two-way players in the league, you really have a good backcourt for these young guys to learn from.
Without a doubt. When he talks about a guy playing both sides of the ball, Jrue Holiday has been talked about at that position, and not just the point guard position or the shooting guard position. He's been mentioned as a combo guard.
Right.
He can guard 1 through 3. Guys that can do that can make it to where you guys can switch on defense. those type of things is what Damian Lillard has never had. Even though he's had C.J. McCollum, him and C.J. McCollum were not together to be a prominent defensive guarding team. Like they weren't supposed to be out there guarding things and cutting the head off the snake, so to speak. Drew Holiday has always prided himself on that, and he's also prided himself on being able to stand next to a superstar and say, this is where I fit in.
The Portland Trail Blazers, they finished the end of last season 23-18. So they put together a little run there, really defensive-minded run where they were able to stack together a couple of wins here. And now they get the most famous Trailblazer in the history of the organization back. The letter O is back in Portland. It is Dame time, but over.
Malika, Pelicans lottery pick Derek Queen has undergone surgery to repair a torn ligament in his left wrist. He will be reevaluated in 12 weeks. He's averaged 14 points, 11 rebounds so far in Summer League, but now this is an injury that's going to sideline him into training camp, potentially into the regular season in his rookie season. And remember, the Pelicans moved up 10 slots in the NBA draft from 23 to 13, and they gave up a unprotected first-round pick for 2026, their own or Milwaukee's, in that trade to move up 10 slots for Derek Queen. They think very highly of him. His rookie season looks like it will be at least a little bit cut into with this injury.
Yeah, and that's a really valuable pick they gave up here, looking at the depth of this 2026 draft. Shams, while we have you here, we know there's also, Summer League is also a time for a lot of wheeling and dealing. What else are you following out of Las Vegas right now? Yeah, you and I have been talking about that focus, that renewed focus that Trey Young has, not going to the Jordan party with other Jordan athletes and instead being in Las Vegas, seeing his teammates working out, those sorts of little things. At times, Trey Young's leadership over the years has been questioned, and I really think this summer we've seen several instances of him really rising to the occasion. Shams, thank you so much for that insight and that reporting. I want to bring in Mr. Money Moves, Bobby Marks here, because whenever we're talking about contract negotiations, I need you to weigh in here, Bobby. How would you approach this with Trey Young?
I would approach it with an extension, but not at the 4 for $222 number here.
Okay.
I think we're in a day and age of roster building where you have to be extremely careful when you hand out max contracts where you're averaging out $55 million. And Trey Young is certainly an all-star level player. I'm not putting him up there in a top 15, maybe even top 20 in the NBA here. And I think I want to see how this roster develops. They certainly went out and got Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, Kristaps Porzingis. They drafted Asa Newell. Dyson Daniels is also up for an extension here. I'm waiting out this season here. I'm offering him something, but it's not going to be at that 4 for $222 number.
Interesting. Do you think that that's the number that's a little too high for Trey? I don't like to count people's money.
Yeah, I don't either. But I think back on that quote that I was talking about when Kevin Durant said he thinks the 6-foot point guard might be coming to an end.
Oh, yeah, when he was on Mind the Game.
And this is what I think he was talking about, where you're saying, yes, Trey Young, statistically, what he brings to a game of basketball, I get it. At 6'2"?
6'3".
6'2", 6'3", it's tough to say, can he switch on to a 5 at the end of the game? Can he guard a bigger guard? Can he, what are the other things that he can do besides score it? Can he make a 2 guard a scoring champion? Those are the things that we're thinking about and we're looking at when we're thinking of a smaller guard. You're thinking of a guy that can get guys going, that could pitch ahead, especially after seeing OKC and Indiana in the finals. You have to be thinking we have to change our game and change our style a little bit to make sure that we're pitching ahead, we're moving the baton, and we're making sure the other guys are getting off. If you don't have 3 or 4 guys that are weapons on your team, if there's only one head to cut off the snake, then it's going to be a tough day for him.
Basketball Reference is saying 6'1" here for Trey Young. Udonis, how are you looking at this?
I mean, I see Trey Young as a max talent. When you look at guys like Jalen Brunson and those guys, I see Trey Young as a max talent. This is a guy who hasn't averaged less than 24 the last 3 years. And by the way, he's either led the league in total assists or assists per game. So you can see how much of their offense that they are accounted for. When you look at what they've done, when they put Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's a great two-way player. You got Dyson Daniels, who was one of the top defensive players of the year last year, also most improved. You got Caleb Houston. We talked about what they do in Canada and those guys having something in Canada. This is a guy who shot over 50% last year, the second half of the season after All-Star break. You got Porzingis, who's a guy who can be a matchup problem offensively, shoot the three, and also be a rim protector. So, yes, he's not going to be a guy that Trey is going to switch on, but you've put enough pieces and enough defense around him where you can protect Trey Young. The question with Trey Young is he going to show up an hour before practice? Is he going to stay 2 hours late after practice? Those guys in that locker room and in that organization have to believe that it is just as important to Trey Young as anybody else. If it's important to Trey Young, it will be important to everybody else in that locker room. That's where I think the separation is for Trey Young. How important is it, and can he lead this team to a championship and be that leader and that guy that's accountable? That's where he falls short. That's what he's working on. I love the fact that he didn't take the Jordan tour and he was there this year. That's the only thing I see him falling short of. But when you look at the numbers, you can put Trey Young numbers right up next to Jalen Brunson and all those guys, and his numbers will equal out.
Without a doubt. I second all the things that he said. I think that it's going to have to be a decision in Trey's mind of what does he want to be remembered for.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you have shown us all your gifts. You've shown us what you can do. And now to win and take the next step, that's where the breakdown of film has to be a little bit different. And we just want to see him take that next step. It's not that we don't care about the backs, but it's like you got to take a couple million less, a couple million less, make sure your team is good, and keep playing where you want to play.
I also think that he has a real opportunity to do that this year differently than we've seen since they were able to in 2021, right? Because I sat down with Tyrese Halliburton in the NBA Finals, and we're certainly hoping to see him back on the floor soon. He said something, he didn't mean it as a diss. He just meant it as a fact. He said that after we made it to as far as we did in the playoffs 2 seasons ago, people looked at us and said, are we the Atlanta Hawks from 2021, or are we going to prove that this was not a fluke and we're going to get back there? The Atlanta Hawks have an opportunity to prove that they're still a team that's formidable, especially in an Eastern Conference that really is as wide open as I have seen. So if Trey Young and this Atlanta Hawks team, they've done an excellent job this summer, is able to maybe throw a punch in that Eastern Conference conversation, then it's going to be something really interesting to talk about, especially because, as Sean just said, Trey. Hey, so let's have some fun. It's our hit game, Who Said That, where I get to put on my game show voice, and we're going to take a look at some of the quotes that caught our attention and ask our esteemed contestants who said that. Sound good? All right, let's get it started. Shump, who said this? Quote, no BS. I don't back down from anybody or anything. Everybody to me is the same. Was it Draymond Green? Was it Dylan Brooks? Or was it Isaiah Stewart? Welcome to the game, my friend.
Wow. I'm going to go with Dylan Brooks.
Was it in his first guess ever in Who Said That? Dylan Brooks, ding, ding, ding.
Of course.
There you go.
Of course. But I just feel like they put cameras in his face a lot.
No bull. I would say, I don't back down from anybody or anything. Everybody's, to me the same.
1 for 1. You need to play a minimum of 3 times to be on our leaderboard, but that is a very, very good start there. And I like, Dylan letting the scout breathe a little bit here in the summertime. Mr. Marks, you are up next, sir. Who said, quote, I love him, of course, but that would be fire to get a poster on Jesus. That would be so cold. That's such a crazy flex. Was it Anthony Edwards? Was it Scotty Barnes? Or did Karl Anthony Towns say this? Wanted to put Jesus on a poster.
I want to say it's Anthony Edwards, but I'm going to pick Scotty Barnes.
Okay, we're going with a little bit of zigging when everyone else is zagging. Oh, it was Karl Anthony Towns.
Oh, it was neither.
Love him, of course, but that would be fire to get a poster on Jesus. That would be fire.
You talking about
That would be so cold. That's such a crazy flex.
I thought he was talking about the Messiah.
Yeah. I don't want no post on Jesus.
That's what I said, bro. What you doing?
Udonis, you are solidly in the upper middle of the pack on our leaderboard here. So our next one is for you. Who came back from vacation and said, quote, I thought Maximus was a real warrior. I'm going to go to the Coliseum screaming, Maximus! And my tour guide said he's not real. Was it Tyler Hero? Was it Buddy Hield? Or was it Scoot Henderson?
Got to be my Bahamian brother, Buddy. He ain't had his conch salad. That's what it was. He had his conch salad over there. Ain't no conch salad over there.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny too. I can picture him saying it. Well done.
Maximus was a real warrior. So I'm going to the Coliseum screaming Maximus, and my tour guide said he's not real.
Good for you, buddy. I'm glad you had a good vacation. I'm glad you had fun. And there was a little educational moment, too. All right, last one's for everyone. Let's come to a consensus here. Who said this, quote, I'm not a super anxious guy or anything like that. So on the plane, when I found out, I just kind of said, well, I'm traded. And I took a little nap. Was it Michael Porter Jr.? Was it Lonzo Ball? Or was it Colin Sexton? I would not have been able to take a nap.
Michael Porter Jr.
Michael Porter Jr. Bobby, you good with my MPJ?
I agree with you, D.
Oh, it is Michael Porter Jr. Well done.
I'm not like a super anxious guy or anything like that. So on the plane, when I found out, I kind of just was like, well, I'm traded, and kind of just took a nap afterwards.
I can't pull off a bucket hat. I'd like to, but
When you get buckets like that, you gotta throw the bucket on. Throw the bucket on.
be here for the rest of my career. I love this community and everything you've given me and my family. There's a lot more work to do. You guys deserve a championship, and I think we're just getting started here. Now, those championship aspirations, they got off to a little bit of a rocky start in 2024. Embiid, he would miss the first 9 games of the season due to injury and a suspension. When Embiid was on the floor to start the season, he did look good, though. 31-point game against the Bulls after missing the previous 7 games, a 27 and 9 rebound performance against the defending champion Boston Celtics. That one was on Christmas Day. However, the Sixers and Joel, they would start to struggle in February after a 7-game losing streak, and then the Sixers made that decision to shut him down for the remainder of the season with a lingering knee trouble here. So for the first time here on NBA Today, I'd like to welcome in Dotun Akintoye, who just released an excellent profile that's up right now on ESPN.com. I really encourage all of our readers to take a second to go and read it when you have an hour this afternoon. But you sat down with Joel Embiid several times throughout this story. What stood out to you the most in those conversations?
Well, thanks for having me first, Malika. I think Joel is an incredibly sensitive, incredibly complicated person. And I think there are some of those traits that are perhaps at odds with the role that he plays, which is a leader of an organization, a superstar. And I think he's been struggling with that ever since he's been cast in that role.
Yeah, I think sensitive was a really good way to put this. And the way that you explore what Joel Embiid has been through in this story was really interesting to me. Something that jumped out in your profile was just the amount of frustration, I think, that Joel has fostered throughout his career, especially with the organization. How did he express that to you? Because there was a couple of specific moments that I think fans may be surprised by the behind the scenes of.
Yeah, I think, we talked about continuity quite a bit, and it means something to him. I mean, in basketball terms, I think he has a sort of theory about roster consistency and what that does. He often talks about the Denver Nuggets and their championship, but I also think it means something to him in a deeper way than that. Trust for him is like a huge, not a concern, perhaps a fixation is maybe the better way to. And, one of the incidents of the last season was the leak in the fall after a closed door meeting that the team had. And he brought it up with me, and it's still bothering him very clearly. I think for him, it's a microcosm of certain fears he has and a certain history he has with the organization about people who maybe don't have his best interest at heart and who he can't rely on. So it's on his mind. It's a huge facet of his personality. And one of the ways that I read it is he looked to sort of take back some of that control when he felt like that trust was spiraling. He talks about the behind the scenes of an interview he did this season with Lisa Salters. Can you tell us about that? Yeah, I think Joel was incredibly frustrated this last season. and he felt like no one was listening to him. And it felt, again, I think, of an echo of an earlier part of his career where he didn't feel listened to and he shut down. And I think not a similar thing happened this year in that, there was a lot of pressure on him to play and his body didn't feel right. And I think finally, and I think the conversation with Lisa happened in February, he had enough and he was going to speak his mind publicly and sort of state his position and then let the team deal with the fallout of that.
And that's when he said to Lisa, I may have to have surgery. The team was caught off guard by that, but that seemed to be, as he put it, his cry for help is the way that he described it to you, to sort of say, no, I need to be listened to here. And now he's describing this as the most important offseason of his career. And I think there may be some fans, just being honest out there, who may say, well, what about the last ones? We've heard this story before, right? Why does this feel different, and how does he plan on sort of wrapping his arms around this?
Well, he's approaching it, I'd say, carefully and aggressively at the same time.
Okay.
I saw him shortly after his surgery, and he was already in rehab. But I think also he's being careful in that he's not going to allow external pressures to force him back to the court before he feels he's ready to come back. And I think there's a big uncertainty. He doesn't know what body he's going to be returning to and what kind of player he's going to be. And it's difficult to ascend to the place that he's been as a player and then be anything else. So I think that's the thing that's on his mind, and that's why it's so important, because the next time we see Joel Embiid on the basketball court, we will be watching, hopefully, I think he believes, the last few years of his prime.
Doesn't know what sort of body he's going to be returning to. I imagine for an NBA superstar, that's an incredibly scary feeling in a lot of ways, still trying to feel like yourself, as you said, in the end of your prime. Through all of these ups and downs, Joel Embiid has been really introspective, and it's rare that he gives someone such an intimate glance, and he did that with you here. What has he learned about himself through this process that now he's ready to share with the world?
I think the last year of his life has been really momentous for him. There's so many things to talk about. I think in a way he's learning that he needs people more, but I think he's also learning to please them less. And that's an interesting place to be. He talked to me about being in therapy and trying to, sort of unpacking the feelings he's been dealing with, I think, over the last year, but also over the length of his career. There's, one of his former coaches said something to me. They said, Joel would have been fine on a deserted island. I think there's something fundamentally lonely in him, and I think he's learning about that too. But that's at odds with the role he has to play, as we said earlier. He has to be a leader, and I think he's learning about that side of himself and trying to explore that. The friendship that he has with Tyrese Maxey is really important. It's a real connection for him, and I think it's made him a better teammate.
Dotun, I really appreciate you taking the time to sort of walk us through the way that Joel Embiid has been thinking and feeling about this entire process. Pun intended, but I really encourage everybody to go and to read your story, because I think, as everyone at home knows right now, there is so much nuance that we can only capture so much of right here on NBA Today. Dotun, I really appreciate the time. Again, his story is up right now on ESPN.com. And when he is right, there is nobody like Joel Embiid in terms of scoring, right? His 30.9 points per game the last 5 seasons, it leads the entire NBA here. As we say hello to our front office insider, Bobby Marks, I want to dive into a lot of parts of this story, Bobby, but let's start here with you, because there's so much to unpack. Do you agree, Bobby, that this is the most important offseason of Joel Embiid's life here?
I do, Malika, and I look at this as this partnership between Philadelphia and Joel Embiid. There's no turning back, right? Like, they've got to make this work, certainly from the Embiid health perspective here. And I remember last September when Joel Embiid had 2 years left on his contract, and he wound up signing that 3-year max extension. And that drew a lot of ire across the league. Why would Philadelphia commit another 3 years to a player that certainly is an MVP candidate, but it certainly has been injury related? And here you look at it. There's 4 years, $242 million. Malika, the last year of that contract is $69 million. That is the danger zone of contracts. So for both sides, they've got to make it work here, for better or worse.
Tim, do you feel like there's a real conflict when it comes to the messaging around the 76ers here between what Joel Embiid is saying and what the 76ers say?
Who cares what I think? Joel Embiid clearly feels like there's a conflict, and there have been a lot of issues with the Philadelphia 76ers throughout the course of his career. The constant seems to have been a lack of trust in the organization, and when trust is lost, it's really hard to regain, really hard to rebuild. And just listen to Joel Embiid, read his words. He clearly does not feel that his best interests are always being looked out for. I mean, he said in the story, the interview with Lisa Salters was a cry for help.
Yeah. And that I thought was really interesting, because it's one thing to feel as if you aren't being listened to. You know this. You've been in these locker rooms. It's another thing to decide that I've been not listened to for so long that I need to litigate it in an interview. And then it's another thing to feel you need to take another step and do this extensive and incredibly well done profile. That feels like it's compounding on top of each other.
Yeah, when hearing that, especially when he used the word as sensitive, a lot of guys hear that word and want to run away from it. Being sensitive to a number of different energies in the league is totally natural. Dealing with the ups and downs, the injuries that happen, dealing with people saying that you don't have the heart to want to play right now, and you know that this might be a worse injury than you're willing to admit to. You have to deal with all that, and I think it's all part of it. I do agree with Joel Embiid, though, that this is a very, very important offseason because, one, getting healthy at that size, you can't teach size, but you also can't deal with the repercussions that come with it. Like having a knee problem, an ankle problem, and then having that weight on top of it, it's a lot. You know what I mean? And for him to play at his dominant style of play that we like, it's like that's going to abuse his knees. That's a lot of spinning. It's a lot of attacking angles and playing angles and, getting to the foul line, doing the little stuff that we like him to do, but it's like to do that, he does have to beat his body up. So take your time, get healthy, make sure you're all the way healthy before you come back, and make sure that you play balls out.
And when you talk about trust issues with Joel Embiid, it's not just about other people in the organization. It's not just about his bosses. He has trust issues with his body, which has betrayed him repeatedly over the years. And we are 18 months removed from Joel Embiid playing as well as we've seen a big man play. I mean, literally averaging more points than minutes, absolutely dominant, and his body just has not allowed him to do that since. And you can understand the frustration.
And that's what we just heard. Hearing to me that Joel doesn't know what type of body he's going to return to, feeling that sort of almost self-betrayal, that's really interesting. That would be really, really hard to deal with, especially because we talked about this before the show. This team was ostensibly put around Joel Embiid. After he won the MVP, they were very honest. The 76ers said, you know what, we know. And Joel Embiid was honest. He said, I'm not really built to play 82 games. I've won MVP. I'm not even sure I'm built to play 65 games. So we're going to go out and we're going to put a team around Joel, the focal point of this franchise that is meant to help him to not have to carry that load. Tyrese Maxey, bringing in Paul George, drafting Jared McCain. In different ways, in different degrees, those players all got hurt, and this roster proved not to be able to help them achieve that one goal. And so now it sort of feels like we're having the same conversation about the same roster in an East that's wide open, and the 76ers should be able to capitalize on.
I get what you're saying, and I know that it probably feels like, for Joel, it's like, y'all aren't giving me, y'all aren't doing enough for me. Like, that's the confusion that comes, right? But it's like health is the one thing that the ownership, the coaches, none of us could do anything about it. We want you guys to play this way, and we want you to, fully commit to your bodies, but injuries are going to happen. They've all been part of the game. We watched them be part of the playoffs and all finals runs. It's just part of the game. So it's like a little bit of that. You got to take your foot off the gas and say, we did have a team. You got to look at the roster and say, we did have a chance to do what we planned to do. It's just we didn't have it that year, which is why this offseason does become important. It
was derailed before the season even really got underway here. I went out there to interview the 76ers during training camp. A week later, those interviews couldn't be aired because injuries had already began to pile up for this team. But man, they're easy to root for. You root for Joel Embiid. You want to see him out there at his best, and hopefully this is